The breaking point. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of the Terran Embassy Station, watching the swirling gases of the Arcturus Nebula with barely contained frustration. Behind her, the morning's diplomatic incident report scrolled endlessly on her tablet. Another week, another dozen complaints about human behavior threatening the delicate sensibilities of their galactic neighbors. The latest grievance came from the Zelaxians, their crystalline bodies practically vibrating with distress when they discovered that humans had installed a basic gymnasium in their sector of the diplomatic quarter. The mere concept of voluntary physical exertion had sent their entire delegation into a state of protective hibernation. Admiral, her aide, Lieutenant Marcus Wong, approached with another steaming cup of coffee, an action that would undoubtedly generate 3 more formal protests about handling dangerous chemicals in public spaces. Let me guess, Marcus, more complaints. Actually, ma'am, it's worse. The Galactic Council has convened an emergency session. They're voting on a resolution to restrict human activities within all diplomatic zones. Sarah's fingers tightened around her coffee cup. After 15 years of humanity trying to play nice, to dim their light, to move slower, speak softer, eat blander food, and pretend they weren't the spacefaring equivalent of apex predators, something inside her finally snapped. "Get me a channel to Earth's Central Command," she ordered, a dangerous glint in her eye. "And then send a message to all human personnel on the station. Tell them," she paused, a slow smile spreading across her face, "tell them Operation Be Yourself is now in effect." The next morning, the station's artificial dawn cycle revealed a transformed diplomatic quarter. The humans had spent the night removing all the modifications they'd made over the years to appear less threatening to their alien counterparts. Gone were the dimmed lights that accommodated species with sensitive optical organs. Gone were the warning signs and safety barriers around dangerous human activities. Gone was the pretense. In the central atrium, a group of off-duty Marines had set up an impromptu parkour course, their powerful bodies leaping and vaulting over diplomatic furniture with casual grace. The station's cafe now proudly displayed its full Earth menu, including spicy foods that would make a Venusian volcano feel inadequate. The first alien diplomat to witness this transformation was Ambassador Xithtul of the Meridian Confluence, their color-shifting scales cycling through patterns of shock and disbelief as they watched a human child, brought to the station during a family visitation day, climbing up a support pillar while their parent calmly spotted them from below. What is the meaning of this?" Xithtul demanded, their translator struggling to convey both outrage and fear simultaneously. Admiral Chen, who had positioned herself strategically to witness the morning's reactions, approached with deliberate steps. She was wearing her full-dress uniform, no longer modified to appear less militant to alien sensibilities. The ceremonial sword at her hip, previously kept stored away to avoid causing distress, gleamed in the newly brightened lights. "This, Ambassador, is humanity being honest," she replied, taking a slow sip from her steaming coffee. "We've spent 15 years trying to make ourselves smaller, quieter, and more palatable to galactic sensibilities. We've modified our behavior, our environments, even our dining habits to avoid causing diplomatic incidents. And where has it gotten us?" She gestured to the latest council resolution displayed on a nearby screen, which listed 37 new proposed restrictions on human activity within diplomatic spaces. "You call us Deathworlders, like it's a slur," Sarah continued, her voice carrying across the atrium where other alien diplomats had begun to gather, watching the scene unfold with a mixture of horror and fascination. "But what you fail to understand is that our adaptability, the very thing that terrifies you, is also our greatest gift to this galaxy." As if to punctuate her point, the station's emergency alert system suddenly blared to life. A nearby solar flare had knocked out the primary power grid, plunging several sections of the station into darkness. The alien diplomats froze in panic, their various physiologies responding to the crisis in ways evolution had engineered over millions of years. But the humans, they moved. Within seconds, emergency protocols that had been drilled into muscle memory took effect. Marines seamlessly transitioned from their exercise to crisis response. Station crew moved through the darkness with practiced ease, their bodies adapted to function in conditions that would paralyze most species. Admiral Chen's voice cut through the chaos with practiced authority. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. We're not going to apologize for being capable anymore. We're not going to pretend that our strength is a weakness. The galaxy needs to understand that humanity's Deathworld traits are exactly what make us valuable allies." As backup systems came online and the crisis passed, the alien diplomats found themselves watching their human counterparts with new eyes. The same physical capabilities that had sparked countless diplomatic incidents had just prevented a potential disaster. The message was clear. The era of humans pretending to be something they're not was over. The galaxy would have to adapt to them, not the other way around. And this was only the beginning. Diplomatic incidents. The Galactic Council's emergency session stretched into its fourth hour, and Ambassador Xithtal was beginning to understand why humans had that curious phrase about herding cats. Representatives from 17 different species were simultaneously trying to address what they dubbed the human situation, each with their own particular brand of panic. The Myraxians, gaseous beings contained within shimmering force fields, were particularly agitated after witnessing a human martial arts demonstration in the station's newly designated combat training area. Their usually orderly molecular structures had become so chaotic that their universal translators were struggling to maintain coherence. They were deliberately striking each other. The Myraxian representative's words came through as scattered bursts of static. For recreation. A hive mind of Teesrix, representing 6 billion interconnected insectoid beings, vibrated their antenna in distress. Our observers report humans consuming substances that would qualify as military-grade stimulants on most worlds. They call it espresso. In the observation gallery above the council chamber, Commander Jack Torres of Earth's Diplomatic Security Force watched the proceedings with barely concealed amusement. He took a deliberate sip from his third espresso of the day, causing several nearby delegates to flinch. "Sir," his assistant whispered, "Admiral Chen's latest report just came in. You might want to see this." The report detailed the events unfolding across various human diplomatic outposts throughout the galaxy. After Operation Be Yourself went into effect, humanity's true nature was on full display. The results were interesting. On Europa Station, the human contingent had organized an ice hockey tournament, their natural predatorial grace on display as they glided across the frozen surface, wielding sticks in a display that sent the local Europan delegates into a mass hibernation cycle. The Mars colony had begun hosting weekly extreme terrain challenges, where humans demonstrated their species' remarkable ability to traverse hostile environments. The footage of humans practically dancing across the red planet's treacherous landscape had caused 3 different species to file formal protests about unnecessary risk-taking behavior. But it was the incident at Proxima Centauri's diplomatic hub that truly captured the essence of humanity's new approach. During a routine meteor shower, when all other species had retreated to their reinforced bunkers, a team of human engineers had suited up and gone outside to repair a damaged communications array. Their casual disregard for what other species considered lethal danger had prompted an emergency meeting of the Council's Safety and Ethics Committee. Commander Torres closed the report just as the council chamber erupted into fresh chaos. The Crystalline Collective had just discovered that humans had installed a sauna in their recreational facilities, a room deliberately designed to expose themselves to extreme heat and humidity. "This is precisely why we must act." Ambassador Xithtal's scales were flashing warning patterns so rapidly they resembled a malfunctioning hologram. The humans are not merely failing to contain their Deathworld tendencies, they are celebrating them. Perhaps, a new voice cut through the chaos. That is exactly what this galaxy needs. All eyes, optical sensors, and sensory arrays turned to face Dr. Maya Patel, Earth's chief xenobiologist, as she strode into the chamber. She moved with the confident grace of a predator species, yet her eyes held the wisdom of someone who had spent decades studying the intricate dance of galactic civilization. "Distinguished representatives," she began, her voice carrying the weight of scientific authority. "I spent 20 years studying the various species that make up this council. Each of you has evolved remarkable adaptations to survive your homeworlds. The Miraxians developed their gaseous form to survive in their turbulent atmosphere. The Teesrics achieved collective consciousness to overcome resource scarcity." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Humanity's adaptations, our endurance, our strength, our ability to thrive in conditions others find hostile. These are not flaws to be hidden. They are tools that can benefit all of galactic society." To demonstrate her point, Dr. Patel pulled up a holographic display showing recent crisis response data. In every major emergency situation over the past decade, human first responders had been first on scene, operating in conditions that would have required extensive protective measures for other species. "We are not apologizing anymore," she declared, "for being exactly what evolution made us. We are not going to pretend that our capabilities are a diplomatic inconvenience when they have repeatedly proven to be the difference between life and death." The chamber fell silent as the implications of her words sank in. It was the Arxian ambassador, their crystalline form catching the light, who finally spoke. "And what of the fear you inspire in others? What of the instinctive terror that grips many of our species at the mere sight of your physical capabilities?" Dr. Patel smiled, an expression that would have once been carefully modulated to appear less predatory. Now she let her confidence show. "Fear is often born of misunderstanding. We're not asking you to stop being afraid. We're asking you to recognize that what you fear about us, our strength, our resilience, our adaptability, these are the very qualities that make us valuable allies." As if to punctuate her point, the station's gravity generators chose that moment to fluctuate. While other species immediately engaged their emergency protocols or froze in panic, the humans in the chamber simply adjusted their stance, their bodies naturally compensating for the changing conditions. Commander Torres, still watching from above, couldn't help but smile as he witnessed the subtle shift in the alien delegate's posture. It wasn't acceptance. Not yet, but it was the beginning of understanding. The galaxy was finally seeing humans as they truly were, not monsters to be feared or wild creatures to be tamed, but allies whose very nature made them uniquely suited to face the challenges of a dangerous universe. And this was just the beginning of their awakening. The human solution. The crisis struck without warning. A quantum cascade failure in the Orion sector's primary transport hub sent ripples of devastation through subspace, threatening to destroy the delicate network of wormholes that connected galactic civilization. The Galactic Council's emergency session had barely begun when the reports started flooding in. "The Helios Gateway is collapsing." The quantum consciousness of the Vex projected their panic across all available frequencies. "The entire Carina arm will be cut off within hours." Admiral Chen watched the holographic display as one transport route after another began to flicker and die. The aliens' most advanced ships were already retreating to safe distances, their crews unwilling or unable to operate in the increasingly unstable space-time conditions. "How long until total network failure?" she demanded. Dr. Kenzo Tanaka, Earth's leading quantum physicist, studied the cascading data streams with intense focus. "At current degradation rates, we have maybe 6 hours before the entire network collapses. Once that happens, 90% of galactic civilization will be isolated. The death toll from resource shortages alone would be catastrophic." The Galactic Council chamber had devolved into chaos. Species that had spent centuries looking down on humanity's primitive nature were now facing a crisis their advanced technology couldn't solve. The irony wasn't lost on Admiral Chen. "Dr. Tanaka," she said, her voice cutting through the panic, "what would it take to stabilize the network?" "Someone would need to manually reset the quantum anchors at the primary hub," he replied, his expression grim. But the radiation levels there are already beyond what most species can survive. The time dilation effects alone would be something humans have trained for. Chen finished, a dangerous smile playing across her face. Get me Captain Diana Martinez on the line. Captain Martinez and her crew aboard the TNS Magellan had been conducting uncivilized survival drills in the Outer Rim when the crisis hit. The Magellan wasn't the most advanced ship in Earth's fleet, but it was crewed by humans who had spent years pushing the boundaries of what their species could endure. Admiral, Martinez's hologram snapped to attention, her environment suit already sealed and ready. We're 20 minutes from the hub at maximum burn. But the approach vector will tear apart any ship using standard navigation protocols. Chen nodded. Good thing humans don't always follow protocols. The next 20 minutes became a testament to why humanity's Deathworld nature had evolved as it did. While the Council watched in horror, the Magellan executed a series of maneuvers that their navigation computers classified as suicide. Captain Martinez had switched to manual control, relying on human reflexes and instincts honed by millions of years of evolution on a planet that had tried its best to kill them. They're using the gravitational distortions to slingshot past the radiation barriers. Dr. Tanaka's voice held equal parts professional admiration and personal terror. The G-forces alone should have knocked them unconscious. But humans, as the galaxy was learning, had a remarkable ability to endure what other species considered impossible. The Magellan's crew had trained for exactly this kind of situation, their bodies conditioned to withstand forces that would liquefy most sentient species. Beginning final approach, Martinez reported, her voice steady despite the tremendous forces acting on her ship. Ridge crew is still conscious and functional, requesting permission to attempt manual quantum anchor reset. Admiral Chen looked around the council chamber at the assembled representatives of dozens of advanced civilizations who had spent generations dismissing humans as dangerous primitives. None of them spoke up to stop her. Permission granted, Captain. Show them what Deathworlders can do. What followed would be recorded in galactic histories as the Martinez Maneuver. The Magellan's crew, protected by nothing more than their primitive environmental suits and their species' natural resilience, executed a series of precise adjustments to the quantum anchors. They worked in conditions that other species' computers had declared unsurvivable, their human ability to improvise and adapt proving more valuable than any advanced AI. Final anchor stabilized, Martinez reported, her voice showing the strain but maintaining its professional edge. Network degradation is stopping. We're seeing regeneration of lost pathways. The holographic display confirmed her words as one by one. The transport routes began to stabilize. The quantum cascade was reversing, the network healing itself now that its foundational anchors had been reset. In the council chamber, the silence was deafening. The representatives of 100 alien species watched as a crew of primitive Deathworlders accomplished what all their advanced technology could not. Dr. Paddle stepped forward again, her expression serious. This is what we've been trying to tell you. Humanity's nature, our ability to survive, to adapt, to face the impossible, isn't a diplomatic inconvenience. It's a resource this galaxy desperately needs. The Arxian ambassador's crystalline form shimmered with what might have been embarrassment. Perhaps we have been too quick to judge what we do not understand. Admiral Chen watched as the Magellan's crew began their return journey, their life signs stable despite having endured conditions that should have killed them several times over. Understanding is a good start, she said, but what we really need is acceptance. Humanity isn't going to hide what we are anymore. The question is, are you ready to accept us as we truly are? The crisis had been averted, but its implications would ripple through galactic society for generations to come. The day the Deathworlders stopped pretending had become the day they saved civilization itself. And they had done it not by conforming to alien standards of civilized behavior, but by embracing exactly what made them human: fear and understanding. 3 days after the quantum network crisis, the Galactic Council convened again. This time, the atmosphere was different. The usual undercurrent of fear and disdain toward the human delegates had been replaced by something new: curiosity. The Magellan's crew, fresh from medical clearance, despite exposure to conditions that should have been lethal, sat in a place of honor. Captain Martinez's environment suit, still bearing scorch marks from radiation exposure, had been requested for display in the Galactic Museum of Achievement, right next to artifacts from the first faster-than-light journey. We have been. High Counselor Xerix of the Collective Minds paused, their neural network struggling to form words that went against centuries of ingrained prejudice, perhaps hasty in our assessment of human capabilities. Admiral Chen sat straight-backed in her chair, no longer attempting to appear less imposing. Hasty is an interesting word for 3 centuries of systematic discrimination, she replied, her voice level but carrying an edge that made several delegates' sensory organs twitch. Dr. Maya Patel stood beside her, armed with data from the crisis. The Magellan's success wasn't a fluke, she explained, bringing up holographic displays of human physical and psychological readings during the rescue operation. Everything that makes us uncivilized in your eyes, our physical resilience, our ability to function under extreme stress, our capacity for split-second decision-making. These are evolutionary advantages that saved billions of lives. The holographic displays showed footage from the crisis. Humans working in radiation zones that would kill most species, maintaining focus under gravitational forces that should have rendered consciousness impossible, making intuitive decisions faster than quantum computers could calculate outcomes. Ambassador Xithl's scales shifted to a pattern indicating deep thought. But surely such intensity, such constant readiness for crisis, it must be exhausting. How do you maintain it? Captain Martinez laughed, the sound causing several delegates to startle. That's what you still don't understand. We're not maintaining anything. This is who we are. When we were pretending to be civilized by your standards, that was exhausting. To demonstrate her point, she stood and performed a series of quick stretches that would have required extensive medical preparation for most species. Several delegates leaned forward, fascination beginning to overcome their instinctive fear. Perhaps, the Arxian ambassador ventured, their crystalline form vibrating at a frequency indicating careful consideration. We have been focusing on the wrong aspects of civilization. Dr. Patel seized on this opening. Civilization isn't about suppressing natural capabilities, she argued. It's about using them responsibly. Every species here evolved different traits to survive their homeworlds. We've been asking you to accept that humanity's traits are just as valid. The chamber grew quiet as security footage from various human diplomatic stations began playing. It showed humans in their natural state, Marines performing combat drills with fluid grace, scientists working tirelessly through problems that would exhaust other species, children playing in ways that would terrify most aliens, but demonstrated remarkable spatial awareness and physical control. "You see danger," Admiral Chen said, gesturing to the footage. "We see potential. Every human ability that frightens you has saved lives. Every trait you've tried to suppress has solved problems your technology couldn't handle." The quantum consciousness of the Vex pulsed thoughtfully. The recent crisis has prompted us to analyze historical data. We have identified 47 major incidents in the past decade where human intervention prevented catastrophic losses. In each case, it was precisely your uncivilized traits that enabled success. And yet, Captain Martinez added, you continue to demand we hide these abilities, to pretend we were something we're not. How is that civilized? The council chamber erupted in discussions, different species debating among themselves in a cascade of languages and communication methods. Admiral Chen watched with satisfaction as the conversation shifted from fear of human nature to consideration of its potential applications. A young Meridian diplomat approached the human delegation, their color-shifting scales displaying patterns of academic interest rather than fear. Would it be possible to observe human training methods? Not to replicate them, of course, but to understand how you prepare for crisis response. Before Admiral Chen could respond, more requests began flowing in. Species that had once filed complaints about human behavior were now asking for cooperation, consultation, and cultural exchange. The hive mind of Teaserix, which had once banned all human physical activities from their spaces, requested human advisors for their emergency response teams. This, Dr. Patel whispered to Admiral Chen, is what acceptance looks like. Not fear transformed into admiration, but fear transformed into understanding. The Admiral nodded, watching as Captain Martinez demonstrated basic emergency protocols to a group of fascinated alien diplomats. "Understanding is just the beginning," she replied. "Wait until they see what humans can do when we're truly allowed to be ourselves." The galaxy was changing. Species that had evolved in safer environments were beginning to recognize that their fear of humanity's Deathworld nature had blinded them to its value. The very traits they had tried to suppress were proving to be essential tools for survival in an unpredictable universe. And humanity, finally free to be itself, was ready to show the galaxy exactly what uncivilized Deathworlders could accomplish when they stopped pretending. A new normal. 6 months after the quantum network crisis, the Galactic Council chambers looked very different. Gone were the sterile, antiseptic environments designed to accommodate the most sensitive species. Instead, the space had been redesigned to celebrate the diversity of all member species, including humans. Admiral Chen stood at the newly installed high-gravity podium, watching as representatives from across the galaxy filed in for the historic session. The changes weren't just physical. There was a new energy in the air, a dynamism that had been lacking in the carefully controlled environment of the past. "Ready to make history, Admiral?" Dr. Patel asked, adjusting her uniform. She no longer needed to wear the dampening field that had once been required to protect other species from human pheromones and natural biochemistry. "We've been making history ever since we stopped apologizing for who we are," Chen replied, noting with satisfaction how the alien delegates now moved with purpose rather than trepidation around their human counterparts. The session began with a ceremony that would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. Captain Martinez and the crew of the Magellan stood at attention as they received the highest honor the Council could bestow, the Order of Galactic Merit. The award had been redesigned, its previous fragile crystalline structure replaced with a sturdy alloy that could withstand the rigors of actual use. High Counselor Xyrix's neural network pulsed with formal patterns as they addressed the chamber. "Today marks the implementation of the Humanity Integration Protocol, a comprehensive restructuring of galactic society to embrace rather than suppress the natural capabilities of all member species." A holoprojectors displayed images from across the galaxy. On Europa Station, human instructors were teaching other species modified versions of their survival techniques. The Myraxians, once terrified of human physical activities, had developed new containment fields that allowed them to observe and learn from human emergency responses without risk. The Arxian colonies had implemented human-designed crisis management protocols, leading to a 60% reduction in casualties from natural disasters. Even the hive mind of Teaserix had incorporated human tactical thinking into their collective consciousness, creating hybrid response teams that combine the best of both species' capabilities. "The past 6 months have taught us a valuable lesson," Ambassador Xithtal announced, their scales now displaying patterns of confidence rather than fear. "True civilization isn't about suppressing our natural traits. It's about using them wisely and teaching others to do the same." Dr. Patel stepped forward to present the data that supported this new approach. "Since implementing the integration protocol, we've seen a 75% increase in successful crisis response across all sectors. Species that once relied solely on technology are learning to develop their innate abilities. The galaxy is becoming more resilient, not despite our differences, but because of them." The chamber's attention turned to a live feed from the newly established Interspecies Training Center on Mars. Humans were working alongside aliens of various species, each bringing their unique evolutionary advantages to bear on complex problems. A Meridian diplomat used their natural ability to perceive quantum fluctuations, while a human colleague provided the physical resilience needed to act on that information. But perhaps most significantly, Admiral Chen addressed the chamber. We've seen a fundamental shift in how species interact with each other. The fear that once divided us has been replaced by mutual respect and understanding. She gestured to the young aliens now attending human academies, learning not to become human-like, but to understand and appreciate their own species' unique capabilities. The quantum consciousness of the Vex had even developed new protocols for incorporating human intuition into their decision-making processes. We no longer hide who we are, Chen continued, her voice carrying the weight of centuries of human evolution. And in doing so, we've encouraged other species to embrace their true natures as well. The evidence was everywhere. Species that had once relied on technology to compensate for their evolutionary limitations were now developing hybrid approaches that combine technological advancement with natural abilities. The galaxy was becoming stronger, more adaptable, more resilient. Captain Martinez, standing with her crew, smiled as she watched a group of alien cadets attempting their first low-gravity maneuvers under human instruction. "They're not afraid anymore," she observed. "They're curious." "Fear to fascination to friendship," Dr. Patil agreed. "It's the human way." As the session concluded, Admiral Chen looked out over the changed chamber. The galaxy had learned that civilization didn't mean suppressing nature. It meant understanding and respecting it. Humanity had stopped pretending, and in doing so, had helped create a new kind of galactic society. "So," she asked the assembled delegates, "who's ready to see what we can all accomplish together now that we're finally being ourselves?" The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Species that had once cowered at human displays of strength now eagerly sought their guidance. The term Deathworlder was being redefined, no longer a slur, but a recognition of valuable evolutionary traits that could benefit all. The day humanity stopped pretending had become the day the galaxy started evolving. And this was just the beginning. End.